just read those words, they never heard it. You know, it's like, where am I? So again, you can just show them what they're going to actually see on the next day, and again, just familiarize themselves with that. So next comes the questions of consent. Dick and Jane, have you come here to enter into marriage without coercion, freely and wholeheartedly? And they each say, and again, you prompt them at the rehearsal, our response or your response is not we do, together deciding this. That's a question to each of them, I have. So I have and I am are their two responses. So if they're using that particular, well, that form stays the same, no matter what you're doing. So again, you do the three questions and so forth. Read through those. Then after that comes the consent. Since it is, once they have agreed to that, since it is your intention to enter the covenant, great word, you know, they should have heard that a lot before as you've talked to them. Since it is your intention to enter the covenant of holy matrimony, I now invite you to join your right hands, declare your consent before God and His church. Now, you know, again, when you have them join hands, it's nice for them to, you know, just to hold hands. It's like you don't want to do a handshake. I've seen it, you know, it's like, you know, they like stick their right hand out like they're going to shake hands. Sometimes in here it says, you know, join the right hand. It's like, don't have them up there shaking hand, you know, standing there for all their photo op. Let them, you know, you're a couple, you know, stand here together, we're holding hands. Now we're going to talk to each other. This is our time. We're going to exchange vows. Okay, so, you know, again, kind of work with that at the rehearsal. So after that particular declaration of consent, then there's some options as to the vows that you can use. If you see those, 96, also 97. So again, on your own, you can read through those, and maybe for this afternoon, you have two different groups.
Yeah, we'll have a group in here and a group in the chapel. I'll divide them up, and they will do starting with paragraph 92 through paragraph 104, I believe it is. No, 105. And the only thing they will omit is the universal prayer.
Okay.
I need to say that.
Okay. All right. So as whoever is up to do the reading, the homily, you know, maybe, you know, someone take a different set of vows so that you can actually let everybody else that's in there hear, instead of everyone doing the same one. I, Dick, take you, Jane, to be my wife, and so forth. Maybe you can pick a couple of different ones, or decide that among yourselves before you have your turn up in front. So anyway, those are those particular options that you can use. If they are uncomfortable, and usually, you know, once again, you simply whisper and feed them a line. Usually you're going to have a lavalier mic yourself that's wireless, picking you up whether you, no matter where you are. They may not, I can tell you this last one, I had like 3 microphones. There was a lavalier mic, there was one from a video company that was videoing, so they had the bride, the groom, the officiant mic, so that just for their video part. And then there was another mic for an external PA system. So it's like this whole string. It's like, you know, you got all these things in your pockets. It's like, you know, they're going to be on. You can control from where you are. You know, that, you know, it's not, I'm not turning things off and on and figuring out who's getting what feed here. So again, that's a little conversation you have when you do the rehearsal, and they tell you, you know, what they're planning on doing. But anyway, with the lavalier mic, what you want to do is maybe whisper, you know, kind of the line to the bride or to the groom, but you want them to project. You want the congregation to hear them, and usually your mic will actually pick that up. And in most churches, they can hear pretty readily. So, you know, you would start off, I did take you, Jane, and then they will repeat that to be my wife, and just give them snippets. You know, you can kind of see the breaks where they are, and all. Now, some folks in the past, I have, are very, they don't, you know, when you talk about public speaking, they want nothing to do with it, even at their own wedding. And actually repeating that, it's like, I don't know if I, you know, I don't want to flub it up, and it's like, that's fine. Then, again, you can use the last form. Dick, do you take Jane, or Jane, do you take Dick to be your husband? Do you promise to be faithful to him in good times and in bad, in sickness and health? And then they only just have to say, I do. And if you can't get that out of them, then we go back to the packet. We start all over.
For pastoral reasons, so that means the preference is really for 96 to use that, or the option right after that.
Really, the alternatives are just that, they're alternatives. You can use whatever you feel to be most appropriate, that you like, that you're comfortable with, or if, now again, I don't have, the older booklets that we had when we used to prep people for marriage, they have all of their options, all of the readings that they can pick out and check and turn back into you. And so they may have like an opening collect, and they may have opening prayers, and they say, I really like this one, or I like this set of vows. So and I'm not familiar if those new booklets are all out or being used. I don't think we have them at our place yet, but I'm sure they are. Someone's making money off of this somewhere.
I was in Macon a couple of years ago at a weekday mass, and they had a wedding actually during the weekday mass, and the officiant actually turned the book around so that they could read. So he wasn't repeating. I didn't know if that. The only problem was that the groom said "I-N." But aside from that, is there any impropriety in that? Well, he's so nervous.
No, honestly, because again, it's not incumbent upon the right thing. You have to say those words. That's
Right.
their words.
Okay.
So, you know, again, if you wanted to be able to do that,
Mhm.
and then just simply point and hold.
And that's what he
for
did.
them.
I thought it was actually really kind of neat,
Yeah.
because he wasn't. It's not like he was prompting through it.
Yeah, and there's nice ways of doing that. Yeah, that'd be perfect. I haven't used that as an option, but I mean.
Well, the downside of that
all kinds
is
of good ideas here.
it's direct, then they're looking at the book and reading the words off the page, whereas if they're repeating after you, they can look at each other.
Right,
And
right.
as they're saying those words,
Right.
they're looking at whom they're speaking to, so.
Option Z is you hold the book over the bride's head so she can look in her eyes.
It's always a good picture.
We'll figure this out, man. Yeah, that's a good point there. Because really, you know, that's the key part. You know, this is what we're celebrating in the sacrament, is that exchange of vows and so forth. So it is kind of nice.
It's just some guy named Dan married
and
some
to look at each
woman
other
named Dan.
instead of. Yeah. But after you do, if you'll find out what works and also what doesn't. And the other thing too is I always, you know, just kind of caution people, you know, the wedding, you know, this is your wedding. So if something, you know, comes a bit unglued for whatever reason, it's unique, and you know what? It'll be a great celebration no matter what. And it'll be one of the most, you know, the most memorable day of your life. And maybe the thing that you didn't anticipate will be the thing that you remember most. So just enjoy it all, you know, and just clue them in ahead of time, because usually it doesn't go exactly as you.
Don't a lot of people memorize their vows? Or no? Like, I thought people did that because I did it twice.
Before, you know, they certainly can, but again, the church expects them to pray these. A lot of people, you know, it's like, well, I would like to write my own vows, which you can, again, in the how we celebrate the rite, we don't usually have that at the time. That can be a question to the pastor to say, after we complete the vows that the church asks them to pray, and they have some particular things that they want to say to each other, you know, Father so-and-so, what do you think? Is that allowable?
No, I wasn't talking about doing their own stuff. I was talking about memorizing.
Oh, just,
Yeah.
no,
People memorize that?
the words are the words for them to share with each other. So whether
Have you
they're
ever
reading
had
it,
that?
whether they're repeating it, the main thing is that this is, you know, my voice and proclamation to you. So if they want to memorize it, that'd be great.
Deacon, finish your thought on the other. If somebody wanted to insert a couple more things after the formal piece,
Yeah, I always check it through with the boss, and I want to see what the vow, what they're saying. It's like, I promise to, you know, to always be a Dallas Cowboys fan for the rest of my life. It's like, well, we can probably dispense with that one. You got another one, you know? But they may have something that's important for them that they would like to say. So that would be it. Again, the caveat would simply be, if you don't mind, write them out exactly as they will be said, and then let me check it with the pastor to occur. But that's where that would occur, right after the church exchange of vows. Okay, down the list, consent, reception is again on page 48. A couple of options there. Typically, if I had, and I had a Catholic and a Jewish person, I would use that second, may the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, who joined. I would use that concluding consent versus may the Lord in his kindness and so forth, just in deference to the faith that they are bringing to the altar on that particular day. But those are the two options. Either of those, you can use them both at any time. And then again, then afterwards they have, this is something new. This was not previously in the old rite. With the conclusion and the reception of consent, the line, let us bless the Lord, thanks be to God, is the response of the community. Now again, those are things that are important to have in a service sheet that's pre-printed and handed out. Most everyone has something like that for a service, not everyone. So if the couple was not planning, maybe they're just gonna have 25 people at their wedding, something relatively small, and it's like, well, we don't wanna go to a printer, we don't, we want, the church, might print up an order of service, just so that whoever is there can follow along, just like you would do at a funeral and so forth. It's a standard, but at least people can look, if they're different denominations, they can look and kind of, I think I know where I am in the service. They see what's coming, what's going on. But any of the responses that need to be said by the congregation, again, that's important that would be in the order of service. So that's one in particular that's an add-on. Next comes the blessing of rings.
Excuse me, did you say you review those things that they print? Do you review it if they decide to print something?
That's a good point. Even when they do their, it'll have listing oftentimes, the bride's family, mother and dad, the names and so forth on one side of the page, the groom, those that are not present, grandma and grandpa that have passed, they wanted to name them, they want them part of the, in the service itself. So they may have that, list the officiant's name, the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, the whatever, maybe a little something that the couple is saying to the community, thank you for being here. So that's sometimes on one side, and then you open it up, or on the second side would have the order of service. So it would, and we would start off and just have them do that. Like I would show them, procession, and just as it's mapped out here, at least the main categories. We would say procession, greeting, maybe put in opening prayer instead of collect. If you were doing different denominations, they may not understand what that is. They might think it's a collection. Everybody will start digging in their pockets. And then again, and then a main thing, liturgy of the word, and then they might just put, whatever the first reading is, 1 Corinthians, so forth, or whatever it might be from the prophets. Usually you'll have Old Testament first, but anyway, they would just list those things, and then after that, they could have a main line, celebration of matrimony, and then just simply, exchange of vows, exchange of rings. So just condense all of that, universal prayer, and then Lord's Prayer. That would be another one, so that people can kind of clue in where they are and where that's taking them. That answer? Good. Thanks, but that's good to review before they get printed. Just ask them, if you don't mind, send me a copy when you get your one, finished up, that you're ready to go to print. And let's just make sure that all the readings are the right verses and chapters and so forth, and just double check all of that. Good. Now again, the options, as we're going down through here, after the acclamation, then we have the blessing and the giving of rings. They envision you blessing the rings, not just with the sign of the cross, but also usually using holy water. So if you, again, this is where an altar server is helpful to be able to assist you with that. But, again, those are just things ahead of time as you're making your notes, and then at the rehearsal, it's like, okay, this is the blessing of the rings. I'm just kind of thinking, what do I have to have around me? Can't be sitting those things on the altar. It has to be close by. So, where am I going to be? Where do I need it? How do I get it there? And it's kind of like just putting on a play. You always think about, behind the scenes, how do we move people from one part of the stage to the other? How do you do it gracefully? How do you get people in and out and up and down? So, it's kind of orchestrating all of that. And that's where, again, just seeing a few weddings at your own parish will help everyone a lot. Because if we just did a generic wedding, we could go according to the book, but then you would find, well, at our parish, we don't do that. We don't. So it's good to kind of just, see how it's playing out in your own particular parish.
Do you typically use an aspersion for that? For blessing with water? You typically use an aspersion with that?
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah, it says he sprinkles the rings as a circumvention, so suggests and gives them to the bride and bridegroom. So typically, the groom has the ring first, and then he will place the ring on the bride. And it would be, Jane, take this ring as a sign of my love and fidelity in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And she'll slide that on. Then likewise, wife places husband the ring on his finger, and with repeating that formula. And then again, this is an option, again, that we're finding, and again, some of you may speak to this more. I haven't utilized this yet, but I know Father Pat, with a large part of our Latino community and so forth, they will also have the blessing and the giving of the coins, the auras, and also the blessing of a veil that comes later on. Since that's an occasional option, you won't be doing that today. I think just read through and see, it's just basically a continued, you also do a blessing. But if you'll notice where that happens. So the blessing of the rings, and then the blessing and the giving of the auras on our chapter 2. Then after that, you would have a hymn, and then the universal prayer. Mass goes to the creed, typically. We don't have that without Mass. So we would go straight to the Lord's Prayer. And then after the conclusion of the Lord's Prayer, so if you went past the blessing and giving of the auras, then universal prayer, next part, blessing, placing of the lazo, the veil, if that's going to be utilized. And again, just another part of the ritual that's another sign and symbol for certain communities that are very meaningful for them. It's been part of their tradition for a long time, and so forth. So very oftentimes, if that's being utilized a lot, or if you're doing weddings where those options are being done, not only getting familiar with the words, but a little explanation to the community that may not have seen that this is new. What's the veil supposed to represent? Why is it spread over the two of them? Or why are they giving coins, sharing blessing and giving to each other? But again, it's a teaching moment, and it's a beautiful ritual and sign, so you engage the community. But it may take a few words prior to celebrating that part of the rite, just to clue everybody in with what's going on. Universal prayer, then finally the nuptial blessing. We're at 104 on page 50. There again, it's a matter of getting familiar with the words. It's really a beautiful, beautiful prayer over the couple. And there are some varying options with that other, we'll show other formulas for nuptial blessing, 207, 209 in the back. So as you read through, I get familiar with just the main one that's in your print that's right first in line. That's probably the one that most people use most routinely. But don't ignore the options that are in the back. At least go through at some point and read through them, and get a little bit familiar. Once that is concluded, then you are looking at the final blessing. So this is the, again, without communion. And then, just go to, if you flip back to page 38. So this is within Mass.
What paragraph is that?
You're looking at 77, and then other formulas are also at 214, 215. This is typically the longer version would be used within the context of Mass. Usually it's a simple final blessing, which would be the one, he blesses all present, saying, may Almighty God bless all of you who are gathered here, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now, again, that's basically the conclusion and the dismissal, and it doesn't list actually in the right that there's any type of music going on, but typically there will be. If it's within Mass, they're going to be a final hymn as everyone is walking out, and usually if it's outside of Mass, there's usually going to be some type of recessional song that's going on. So that's in a nutshell, a real quick nutshell. It always seems like, they're not going to have enough time, and it's like, what? There's always so much more we could talk about. Let me just finish. Any questions? And I think some of it will help. You'll flesh out as you start going through and doing the right this afternoon. Yeah, Matt.
Real briefly, going way back to the liturgy of the word, you said it happens more or less as during Mass. I don't think that I noticed in this right book the greeting before the gospel, the Lord be with you. It just says, reading the gospel according to so and so. Is that omitted for the right, or do you do that even though it's not written in here?
No, do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're still proclaiming
the gospel.
Yeah.
It's interesting because normally you would think that they would have that in the right book also. But yeah, I would.
They do have it in this version.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
It says in there that of the readings, that one of the starred readings must be used. And then we have a list of the other readings in the back. Suppose they come up with some other readings that are, is it just that they have to use one of those starred readings? Can they come up with other readings that aren't listed
Yeah,
here?
I think that the church envisions that, there has to be wedding related, so that's why they say, we would like to have at least a reading from this, area or this grouping. Now, can they have other readings? The short answer is actually yes. But you do want to make sure that it's another reading that you can tie into the celebration of the Sacrament of Matrimony. So, not just, can we add another reading of Kahil Gibran? We would like, and believe me, you're going to hear it all, you're going to see it all. But there's times to be able to do that. A lot of times I'll say, what? Let's, as at the reception, as a lead into maybe a blessing over the food or whatever else, let's do you really love that reading, find a place for it. Don't, instead of just shutting them down and saying, you can't do that.